Hi, this is Peter Purcell, and I'm here with Todd Boutte, who is in charge of our technology transformation practice at Trinergy. Today, what we want to talk about is ChatGPT. Now, Todd, you and Bill just did a podcast on ChatGPT where you introduced what it was. But today, what we want to do is talk about what can you do with it. Because based on the press, if you don't do something with ChatGPT, you're going out of business tomorrow, right?
That's right. You're behind right now. I mean, that's the word. We're going to keep talking about ChatGPT around here because we want to streamline things. We want to tell you, I think, best we can, what it is, what it isn't. So we'll probably be revisiting this topic a few times. This is blowing up. That's
fair. And in fact, actually, our goal is we'll probably send out an interim Trinergy Perspectives email as soon as we finish this, kind of a focus purely on ChatGPT. So the last podcast you did, you really talked about what ChatGPT is. And what I'd like to do in this podcast, Todd, is let's talk a little bit about, as a company, what should you do with ChatGPT? Because you can do an awful lot for not a lot of money. Right.
Yeah. So I know we've got a couple of bullet points in mind, but this is one where we've kind of looked at the broader picture. So let's drill down on what a company might actually do with this internally, and then ideally what we're going to or how we're going to respond as Trinergy dealing with the realities of this.
So just for those of you who are about to drop off because you just pulled into the parking garage, there's three things we're going to talk about today around ChatGPT. First thing is what a company's going to need to do is to identify use cases that would make sense using the tool. And we have some very, very, I think, crunchy suggestions. The second is to team with somebody as you're doing your implementation who knows something about AI and who knows something about in this space and has success. Strangely enough, there are a few companies that have done that, and we'll run through one or two, and as we continue our research and find others, we'll be glad to share them with you. You just need to send us an email at info@trinergy.com. And then the third thing is setting up a governance model around the ChatGPT environment that you set up in your company. So let's start off with the first one, which is setting up use cases, Todd. As we sit there and we think about use cases, and we have a variety of industries that we serve, what are some of the use cases that folks should think about?
Yeah, one of the big ones, and this is exactly where I wanted to jump off from my chat with Bill, was really building out an internal knowledge structure. It's quite obvious to us with most clients that the majority of employees don't really know how to get answers to things, right? And that could be a big range of things. That might be an HR question. It's hard to track down a policy. It might be critical instructions or troubleshooting to a complex piece of machinery, or something more mundane about, when's the next company holiday. But whatever it is, you're almost always relying on tracking down a human to give you an answer, or a manual, or another vendor that you might have to make an appointment with. So the most obvious use case to me was, well, what is an internal use of an AI type model? How do you make your knowledge base more portable and accessible? And the most obvious use case for me was just this ability to just talk to a virtual assistant effectively. When you have a question. Pulling out your phone or your laptop, or just going to a computer in the shop and just asking a question.
Yeah, so really what you're alluding to, Todd, is, in the old days, right, when I wasn't gray, we always talked about knowledge management and how folks retiring from companies were leaving with critical knowledge. And so there was a lot of money spent on trying to create these internal knowledge bases. But now with ChatGPT, you can do things with unstructured data, which we couldn't in the past. Like documents, we're talking about legal documents, we're talking about insurance policy documents, we're talking about land records, we're just all sorts of complicated documents. They're hard to read, they're very hard to link to other documents. And so are you suggesting that what ChatGPT or a ChatGPT type tool could do is hoover in that information, make those connections for you, so then you can start asking questions about them?
Yeah, absolutely. And the key way you would ask questions, or the key benefit being that you can talk to it like a human being would. So you can use, shorthand, or you can ask follow-up questions. You can have it deal with the legalese of like a policy document or like you said, a legal document of some type, and just sort of communicate. It's not a search anymore. It's talking to a person, ideally, if you've prepared all your documents correctly, that knows the ins and outs of every document you fed it.
So this is like almost like chatbot plus, and I hate to use the term chatbot, but most chatbots, what people don't realize, have a fixed set of, there's a database of questions and a database of answers, and those are linked together. And a chatbot is very, very frustrating. I hate chatbots. Just for those of you out there, I just hate chatbots. If you have a chatbot on your website, I won't use it. Now, I will chat to a human, but I hate chatbots. But what this does, it sounds like, is it's almost like chatting with a human. The fact that the tool can make all these links, these complicated links that even a good human, maybe sitting down and reading 400 documents or 400 contracts, couldn't do. And, it does it in seconds, whereas, for us it'd be years.
Right, and think about kind of the scenarios where you have, one that comes to mind, I think you've brought up, is you might have a piece of equipment that's going to outlast 4, 5, 6 people that know how to run it the best. And so that knowledge has to turn over every single time, and you might have a master and an apprentice relationship. But then
what happens when the master goes away?
Exactly.
Well, and so in that case, what's cool about ChatGPT is it can go back and look at the entire maintenance history or entire repair history. If you've kept halfway decent documents, and it could potentially spot trends that you and I would never see, because we would never go back and read 15 years of, PMs, preventive maintenance, or maintenance requests.
Well, and I think my favorite thing about that exact scenario is that simultaneous to the sort of real world documentation you've kept on something internally, you'll have the vendor's, like maintenance agreement and the, service manuals for this piece of equipment and the user manual, all the things that you've probably sort of skimmed or, barely looked at. But if you were able to merge those two things together,
which it can.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you bring up a great point when you start thinking about return on investment. Think about this, guys. You have one equipment failure where you can actually attribute it back and get it fixed under warranty will more than pay for whatever we're about ready to talk about in terms of implementation. Just one. And I can't tell you how many of my clients have probably missed that type of opportunity just because we rely on humans, right?
Well, just think about the flexibility of something like that too. If there was one singular person in your company that you could ask a complex maintenance question to, and then simultaneously or immediately after, because you're just curious, ask it when the next company retreat is. Like
there you go.
You can't do that.
You can't do that, but you can now.
Right.
So
and, and you're not bouncing around. You're not trying to
right.
track down people.
So we've actually hit on a couple of use cases, right? Legal documents, preventative maintenance documents. We just hit on potentially HR policies,
maybe payroll,
those kinds of things. So any of those heavily documented policies and procedures or contracts or just complicated, unstructured information that you have, layering this over the top and bringing it together. And then actually yesterday I was talking to my neighbor. She works for a big box store, and she's a customer service representative. She works out of her house. And she was kind of a little frustrated because she'd heard that particular store is already testing ChatGPT with voice, text to voice or results to voice within customers, and you don't even know it. You're not talking to a customer service representative. So, I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But that kind of stuff could be coming, and it's an idea.
Yeah, that one seems inevitable to me, unfortunately. I think for the most part, a company would love to hand over the traditional phone tree that gets you to a real person.
Right. Turn it over to something.
Yeah,
right.
They probably will.
So now that we've kind of identified just sort of chum the water, if you will, for use cases, and I'm sure, our 4 listeners can probably come up with better ones. But the next case is, finding an implementation partner. And that may be, it actually may not be as hard as you would think. There are a number of companies out there, and I would recommend you guys, just as an example, I'm not trying to push anybody, but go to allganize.ai, ALLGANIZE.ai. They're a company that we're a little familiar with, and what they do is they've actually implemented AI in the scenarios, some of the scenarios that we just talked about. And what's important there is, if you remember, ChatGPT has quote-unquote open APIs to the world. Sorry for the technical term, and I know we said that we weren't going to use jargon here, but basically the information that goes into ChatGPT from anywhere in the world is essentially accessible by everybody else. So from a security perspective, you have to start thinking about, okay, if I want to implement this and I'm, using this tool in my company and I have all of these documents that I really don't want the rest of the world to see or know about, but I do want the ChatGPT engine, there's several ways to do it. And companies like Allganize, and there's others, again, as I said earlier, we're still researching. Reach out to us, and as we learn more, we'll let you learn more. But still taking the power of this tool, but securing it. Now, I know Microsoft said that they will probably, allow people to license standalone versions of ChatGPT within their company. My only concern about that is you kind of have stunted learning, if you think about it, because then you don't have, all the other learnings going on. May or may not be a bad thing, but something to think about. But what you need to do there, Todd, I guess, is somebody who knows the security, somebody who knows how to implement, somebody that will help you, which we'll get to this in a second, help you babysit it, if you will, because it will need some care and feeding, and know how to implement, right? I mean, anything I'm missing there?
No, you got it right. I mean, this is an area that's ripe for partnerships, right? To work with folks that have been at this problem for years and years. So we talk about OpenAI mostly because ChatGPT is this kind of unique product. At least publicly, people believe it to be a unique thing. But there are companies that have been at problem solving in this area for a long time already, and they're going to be the most capable folks at bringing in such a powerful product into your business and setting boundaries around it, letting it kind of really be appropriately implemented in your company, right? Attacking just your data, answering the problems that you needed to answer, and then actually kind of in parallel to what you mentioned, the goal for this product, as it's implemented, OpenAI's version of it, will be that you do get the benefit of its growth in natural language processing, and that will be rolled out to you as a partnered company. So that it shouldn't necessarily be as stunted as it currently feels like, where you'll get the benefit of its learning from kind of the rest of humanity in this public space. But if it's implemented in your company, its structured vocabulary will be built off your data. So hopefully we get the best of both worlds. You get kind of the siloed superhuman problem solver that knows your company, but its growth kind of in the background. It's still going to college. It's going to grad school. It's getting a PhD now in like natural language processing.
Well, yeah, and we may end up having to come up with other degrees, because I'm shocked at how far it's grown just in the last 4.5 months or so since it was released to the public. I don't even know where it's going to be at the end of this year, right?
Right, and this is a topic for another day, but if anybody wants to explore, just go watch a couple of videos now that it is attached to Bing Search. So Microsoft
it's amazing.
turned it loose on the internet. It's still kind of a preview-only product, but this is a way to interact with kind of another iteration that's extremely powerful.
Well, and it has to be powerful, and there's things that we may not be seeing, because the minute Microsoft made that investment and the minute that Microsoft said, hey, we're going to put ChatGPT as part of Bing Search, what did Google do? They re-released Bard AI. Now, of course, it answered the question wrong, but that was a rush to market. I don't think it's necessarily that Bard AI is bad. I just don't think it's been around. It hasn't had the same care and feeding as ChatGPT has had in the last few months.
Yeah, they're behind. For the first time, Google in 2 decades is behind.
Yeah, it's kind of scary, and
surprising.
They're going to have to catch up fast. I mean, they really are. So that's really talking about your partner and all of that. The last thing I want to talk about, maybe the last 4 or 5 minutes that we have together here, is we'll call it a governance model. But once you bring in ChatGPT and the tools that you may surround ChatGPT, but by the way, to secure it and the like, Organize has some, and other companies, they kind of have some proprietary tools and ways of interfacing with ChatGPT to protect your data and stuff like that. And I hate to personify ChatGPT, but I think, Todd, and you and I were talking, it sounds like you almost have to put together almost like a mentor model. I mean, you almost have to think about it as a new business analyst that comes in, and it's going to need a lot of attention at the beginning to learn your business, learn what's important. And then, of course, as it continues to grow and build its knowledge base, you can step back. But you still have to evaluate for accuracy, randomly audit for accuracy, completeness, etc., right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard not to personify something like this, because to improve its behavior, you're not programming it. You're not having a developer or an implementer come in and say, well, I got to go write a bunch of code to solve that problem. You asked it this question and gave you a bad answer. Tell it was a bad answer. It's great. I mean, just give it feedback, and you can correct behavior that way. What I'm most curious about is how companies like Organize or maybe your internal procedures around this governance model can help it not be led astray. I'm very curious how companies will handle that, because in theory, you could tell it something that is incorrect. How will it react to that? If you get a really stubborn person that says, no, you're not giving me the answer I like, I'm going to keep telling you it's something else, because let's say it's the way I like to do it versus the way you're telling me. How are they going to respond to that?
Well, it's interesting. I wonder if there's ways, and I'm sure there probably is, but a business analyst will sniff out that kind of resistance. And it could be just a mismatch, really, between what's commonly available out there versus what the person is saying. So wouldn't ChatGPT potentially be able to say, hey, mentor, I have a clash here, help me out, right? Or part of the mentor's job is to go in and randomly audit, right, different interactions. Make sure, one, the interactions are the correct ones, and secondly, that the answers are right. I'm wondering if it's not something like that, Todd.
Yeah, it'll probably organically work out. I mean, much in the way of like an employee sort of with poor performance, these things, they tend to surface. And I guess what we can hope for is that during your implementation and setting up this governance model, that you've given it the tools in the background, right? These are the policies and procedures you're built to follow, right? These are the frameworks. These are let's go back to the maintenance example, right? This is the instruction set from the vendor. This is our documentation. For the most part, it should kind of weight those things more heavily.
Right. Well, and what I have seen with some of these tools is, it'll give you percentages that it assumes accuracy of answer, right? I'm 80% confident my answer is correct. Or, the other thing that some of these tools I've seen in the past, and I'm assuming we can do this with ChatGPT, is the answer, how compliant is the answer to the policy and procedure. So for example, you're me and, I'm not going to say you're the geezer in the room. I'm the geezer in the room and it's my way or the highway. ChatGPT can say, hey, your my way is only 40% of what the policies and procedure documents or what the instruction document or what the maintenance, what the vendor, to your point, the vendor instruction document says, internal documents, etc. Or, that is a true violation of our safety policy, right. Which, by the way, as we're talking, we may not even think about the safety policy, but the ChatGPT will bring all of those things in. Absolutely. So I'm assuming there's ways to tell those types of things.
Yeah, drop in an OSHA handbook. Says like, okay, well, the response says, OSHA suggests this or whatever. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's ways around this, and it's going to be fascinating to watch. And one of my favorite things during all this sort of public-facing experimentation we've had with ChatGPT is asking it why. Why did you suggest that, or how did you come to that conclusion? And that's going to be the interesting sort of training and setup phase internal to a company. Once it's in a new space, right, probe it. And I think that's to be honest, that's the kind of thing you should do to a human too.
Exactly.
It's so fascinating to be able to say like, all right, we've built out training and onboarding methodology that works really well for people. And you say, well, we're going to apply this to some software now.
Yeah.
What a world.
It's an awesome world. So on that note, again, what we wanted to do is talk a little bit today about what you should consider doing or what companies should consider doing with ChatGPT. Again, if you were to read all the hype and believe all the hype, if you don't mess with ChatGPT, you're going out of business. I'm not sure that's necessarily the case, but I do believe that with this tool, this is a very powerful tool that can save a lot of money and a lot of time. But first you've got to do is you need to start with use cases. Second, partner up with the right people. And third, make sure that once it's implemented, you don't just walk away from it. It's like bringing in a very powerful resource. You got to care and feed for it. Anything else that maybe I'm missing in all that?
No, I think keeping in mind use cases is the most critical at this point, because right now everybody is in a fervor. Everybody's excited. Everybody wants to do this. Everybody wants to try something. I would caution everyone not to jump in and attach any sort of major commitments to this thing without really understanding what you could accomplish. And I'm hoping we can help with that sort of discussion.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, guys, again, I'm going to go back to a comment that may have been very quick at the beginning. This does not have to be expensive. This is not a, multi-million dollar effort to bring in and try this at the very beginning. It's nowhere near, that expensive. This is not like ERP. This is not like even, putting in, 50 Power BI reports. This is actually fairly cost effective. Once you get past the whole security, and making sure that your data stays protected, it's really not that bad. So if you have any questions or you have any comments or ideas about the next podcast, you can email Todd at trinergy.com or me, Peter at trinergy.com. Thank you.
Thank you.